Welcome back to Analysis, where we've been discussing the growth of food banks in Britain. Well, joining me from the first half of the discussion again is Ben Southwood from the free market think tank, the Adam Smith Institute, and Hannah Billing from the London Street Food Bank, a cooperatively run food bank. And now joining us for this second segment is Wassim Noor, chair of Sufra in northwest London, a community food bank and kitchen, and Murad Qureshi, a Labour London Assembly member. Well, Wassim Noor, let me begin first of all. What is your food bank doing, and is it specifically helping Muslim people in the area?
We're a food bank in northwest London covering Brent, Harrow and Ealing. We cater for everybody, regardless of whatever religion they are. We have 35 odd referral agencies where individuals go to see if they're eligible for our services. They're assessed. They're given a voucher, they come to us, and we issue them with a food parcel. We issue a maximum of 3 food parcels a year to any given individual. And in the last 4 months, we recently launched it. We launched the charity a year ago, but we started our service about 4 or 5 months ago. And in these 4 or 5 months, we've served nearly 2,000 people. So, and those people vary from Muslim, Christian, that of no faith or whatever. We don't really have a preference. We don't mind. Majority of our demographics are women, and out of the 2,000 odd people that we've served, nearly 400 of those are children. Not just children under the age of 3.
Where do the donations come from? I mean, are mosques playing a role in trying to collect food that can be given away?
So the way we set up our charity was based on the community coming together. We started with 0 funding from local council or anybody. We got 5 organisations to come together, and each pledge a fixed amount for 3 years. And with that, we covered our base costs, which is our salary, our rent for our staff, and our rent for the premises, and we launched the service. The food that we get is mainly donated from, we've got partnerships with some of the biggest supermarkets. I don't know if I'm allowed to name them, but they allow us to, stand outside their shops and ask people to, when you're going in to buy your weekly shopping, could you please just add 1 can of beans in there for us? And sometimes we also get a donation from these supermarkets. We've also got partnerships with many local organisations who are based on the high streets and some mosques. So we've got 2 mosques on our board, North Harrow Community Mosque and the Islamic Centre of England, which are members of the board, but also themselves donate food on a regular basis.
And are people getting more desperate? I mean, we mentioned that there was this case of these 3 men arrested for going to a supermarket bin and stealing stuff out of there.
Yeah.
Are people getting, desperate and having to resort to these kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, people are getting desperate. We've got, all sorts of people coming, and it takes a lot to actually turn up to a food bank. I mean, some of the, arguments that we hear on a regular basis that our food banks are giving away food for free, so people will go and, depend on them, and hence food banks are growing. But that's not necessarily the case. To be assessed and to go through the whole process of actually seeing if you're eligible for a food parcel is quite lengthy, and it's not easy to go through.
You have to sort of answer a whole lot of questions.
Yeah, you have to answer your, what income you're on.
Like a means test.
Yeah, means test. And our partner organisations do that, including the Job Centre. And many other charities, they go through your income, how much you earn, what your expenditure is, your rent, your salary, whatever, everything. And at the end of it, we see if you're actually eligible for, a small food parcel, which some people are, some people aren't. And then they come to us with their voucher that they've already been assessed. So we don't assess them on site. If they come with a voucher, that means that they've already been cleared, and we issue a food parcel to them.
Well, what's your attitude to this? I mean, is this good or is this a bad thing? I mean, some Tories like Edwina Currie have said that the whole thing is pernicious. It undermines the local economy. The local corner shops are going out of business because all this free food is floating around.
I know it would be fun if I had that perspective, but I really don't believe that. So I can't come out, and I think food banks are great. Obviously, I prefer if no one had to go to a food bank, but it just happens that some people do have to, and given that, it's great that there are food banks.
And was it right that these men were arrested, do you think, for...
Absolutely not. In fact, they had to rely on an extremely old and ridiculous law to try and prosecute them, because it's not illegal it's not theft to take from a bin in a public space. If they climbed a fence or something, they might be trespassing, but they didn't do any of that. It was very straightforward. They took something out of a bin, and I can't believe that people think... I mean, in fact, the uproar made them stop the prosecutions. That's great, but it'd be better if they didn't even try and bring this sort of case.
But isn't this an example how the right-wing media creates a sort of benefit scrounging and people living off nothing?
Indeed. I mean, I found it profoundly moving when I went to a food bank in Peckham at the beginning of this term, where I saw a mother choosing between food or heating her house. I hadn't really come across this in my time in the Assembly.
Heat or eat?
Heat or eat. And these choices, you just take it for granted when you're in regular employment that these things can be done very easily. And the extent of the food poverty, and that's what it is quite substantial. If Thistle Trust was here, they would tell you that they used to have about 400 people using their services in 2010. It's now gone up tenfold. It's about 40,000 people. And that's probably just one in the very extreme end of the spectrum, but that can be taken through quite substantially. And, you know, it's probably a combination of things. There have been severe attacks on the welfare state. You know, job seekers are trying to survive on £71. There is also, still whatever the government says, still high levels of unemployment, and those kind of factors combined with low income to push people in desperation for their basic substance, the food intake. So it's not surprising that certainly in London, this has become a growing phenomenon.
Well, is there anything that the Mayor of London and your London Assembly can do?
Well, we have put proposals to him. I mean, for example, one of the things that we have noticed, we did a survey with my colleague Fiona Twinecross, where school teachers were asked and identified that actually a lot of kids are coming to school hungry and aren't really concentrating well. So a very good thing to do would be to offer free meals to school kids right across the board. Interestingly enough, the Mayor did respond positively to that. He recollected in his days as a primary school student in Primrose Hill that he was given free meals by Inner London Education Authority.
Well, is that going to be Labour policy
if they
come into power?
Well, we have put this proposal in the London context. It's been turned down by the Mayor, and we'll put it to him again on the 14th of February. So if he wants to really make an impact to a particular... Nationally, I'm not responsible for national policy, but I can certainly say that me and my colleagues at the Assembly for Greater London have and will put proposals like this up, because we think it's that acute, that you need to make those interventions at particular groups like young children going to primary school. And I think that's the kind of thing that needs to be done. And we don't want just rhetoric, we want action. And that's the point that we put the idea to the Mayor.
Thank you. Let me bring Hannah back into the picture. I mean, children, I mean, are the people who come to you in your food bank in central London, a lot of them people with kids?
It's mostly families, yeah.
Mostly.
Young kids.
Right.
Young kids.
And do they have to answer a questionnaire like we were hearing?
Yeah, we take people with referrals.
So you know how many kids there are in the family, etc.
Yeah, we only take people with referrals because people just come in off the street sometimes and you just can't tell. I know it sounds like really horrible to turn people away, but you have to, because you just can't tell like where they're coming from or why they're coming, and we just don't have the resources at the moment to give to everyone who needs.
Who refers the people to you?
Same health centres, doctors. We used to take Job Centre, but we don't anymore because too many people were coming. We didn't have enough food to take from Job Centres anymore. Right. Schools as well. And again, back to the donation issue and the charitable giving. Does a lot of it come from churches and mosques, for example? Well, we do get from churches and mosques, but it is mainly from, as I said before, from our donation boxes. Right. And just the kindness of people's hearts. How come the churches and mosques aren't being more vigorous? Isn't it part of their compassion, duty, etc. to do it? I don't know. I mean, I'm not judging anyone for not bringing food because it's hard enough to get by as it is. I mean, the areas that we work in, they are struggling economic areas. So I'm not of the opinion that just because you're religious, you have to give like what you don't have to somebody else. I mean, but I think in other areas, the affluent areas, I think churches do have more of a responsibility. But I don't know, I don't think religion should play that much of an issue in basic humanity.
You agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. If there is something that I think the Muslim communities can do, I know there's a lot of food giving during the month of Ramadan. I mean, you can literally virtually live on the month of Ramadan through the free food that's given in the evenings from all the mosques and what have you. I certainly know my nearest mosque, Regent's Park, does that. Maybe, just maybe, as Muslims across London certainly, we start thinking about how that could be spread across the year rather than one particular month, and encourage that giving that certainly occurs during the month of fasting. For religious observation, maybe it should be extended further into other times of the year. And for example, if Christmas coincides with Ramadan, great, but it doesn't always. It's usually 13 days. It takes 13 days off the year every calendar year. So it doesn't always fall in the same time. But Christmas is clearly a time at the moment where a lot of families would have needed food, whether you're Muslim or not. And in the cold.
What you're saying, I mean, you're a Labour person. Aren't you in a way undermining the role of the state by trying to build up the charitable sector and getting them to fill the gap?
Well, as I said, me and my colleagues have put a proposal. It's there for the Mayor to look at it again. So we do think the state has got an important responsibility and could usefully make a contribution, certainly to young kids. I'm just talking in the sphere of mosques and churches and religious institutions. They've got their own inroads. Right. And, I have observed that in the month of Ramadan, there's a fair amount of food around. Certainly in the evenings when people are breaking fast, and there tends to be generous donations made to a lot of mosques for people to break fast. All I'm suggesting, if there is a particular contribution to be made by mosques, maybe that's somewhere we can actually use the time and effort that goes into that month across the rest of the year, because it's quite true. Yeah, I mean it's quite clear to me when I go to somewhere like Tower Hamlets. The Muslims there, predominantly Bangladeshis, are on the bottom of the poverty heap there, and they're probably being adversely hit with this. And maybe that's what should be encouraged in a place like that.
Well, Wasim, I mean, please come in.
You mentioned earlier it was 40,000 Trussell Trust. It was actually 500,000 nationally. It's 500,000 people, depending on food banks, according to Trussell Trust. And there's many other food banks that aren't Trussell Trust based, like ourselves. So the figure is much bigger than that. When it comes to the mosques, I think for us, we've made some inroads, I believe, and we're very grateful to our donors and the mosques that have helped out, including Stanmore Mosque, Harrow Mosque, North Harrow Mosque as well. Really set a great example of how easy it really can be. Just to hold, we've got yellow wheelie bins that we leave outside with Sufra branding on it, and we just say, just leave non-perishable items in that. You're going to go shopping. It's not that it's not that tough for you to buy an extra can of beans and just put it in there, or cereal. It's not that tough, and I think, speaking within the Muslim community, I think we're so focused a lot of the time on what's going on abroad, where on our doorstep we've got people who are, who are starving. I mean, there was that interesting story a couple of months ago where, a school kid, went to a food bank. I don't know, it was all over the papers, and some of his colleagues at school found out that, one of their fellow pupils had, dependent on a food bank, and they were all heartbroken and shocked, and they ended up doing a collection for that kid. And not just for that kid, but for all the people, because it really opened their eyes that, there are people who are, struggling with food poverty in this country. I mean, one of my volunteers told me the other day that as they were standing outside one of the supermarkets, they explained to one of the people what they're doing, and this chap was his jaw dropped. He's like, "You're telling me there's people struggling to buy food in London in 2013 at the time?" You just couldn't believe it. So I think there is a case for our local communities, mosques, churches and community groups to come together and actually realise what's going on around within our communities, on our doorsteps, in our congregations and really, do something about it. If you're not going to, donate food, at least advocate. At least make people aware of what's going on, and I think that's something that needs to be done. And we've made some inroads, like I said, in some mosques.
I mean, how much evidence is there that Muslim communities particularly are being affected by poverty?
If I'm being honest, again, like I said, with Sufra, this is our first branch, Northwest London, Harrow, Wembley, and Ealing, Brent and Ealing. We're mainly covering Brent. We're opening up another one in Manchester, hopefully soon. But speaking specifically on our demographics in Brent, the majority of the people that we serve are Muslim. Now, that's not because we cater for Muslims specifically, it's just because, unfortunately, within the Muslim community, there's more poverty, in certain areas. They do, unfortunately, need a bit more assistance at the moment. And that's just that's out of our control. It's just we've got a lot of immigrants, we've got all sorts of people, we've got, Eastern Europeans, we've got, people from my country, Somalia, where I was born. You've got all sorts of people, but the majority of them are Muslims. And I don't think, within the mosques, I don't think people are talking about it as much as they should be.
Let's get back to the sort of wider economic issues, which I know are your speciality, Ben. George Osborne says the economy is picking up now, unemployment's coming down, growth is going up, even more than expected, blah, blah. So do you think by 2015, when the next election takes place, these food banks will be ancient history?
See, the thing is, I don't think that. I think that we'd expect there to be a decline. We've had real incomes falling for basically 5 years, which is essentially unprecedented since pretty much never in history have we had real incomes falling for this long a period. So there is that to deal with, and that's a significant factor. And food banks seem to have taken root, and it seems to be a socially acceptable practice. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I think that's a good thing. So I don't think we'll go back to the situation of 2008, where apparently in London there were only 400 people. But I think that 2 years of we'll probably get 1 or 2% growth in a household's income after inflation. That's not going to make that much of a difference if this is due to that. If we got a positive supply shock in food, then a serious difference might be made. If food, which prices are up about 30% in nominal terms since 2008, if we get a reversal of some of that, or just much slower growth in food prices, then that could make a real difference. And if, for example, because one of the factors in food prices is energy prices, if shale gas starts bringing down energy costs a lot, then we'll also see another reason why food will be cheaper. And I think that's one of the key factors going into. I think everyone would agree that expensive food is one of the key factors in why people are using food banks.
So if these food banks are going to continue, do you think that there's any good in them, in the sense that they do encourage some kind of social cohesion and solidarity, people being asked to give an extra tin of something that they buy in the supermarket, that, even if people don't need food banks because they're absolutely desperate, as they seem to be now, but just as a sort of top-up at some future stage in the future, would that be a good thing, that there should still be food banks always outside supermarkets, for example?
One thing it would, I'm not sure, I haven't seen any numbers on this and I have no idea, but my guess would be that it makes poverty near you that might be real, but you don't see as much and appreciate as much. It might make it feel more real to you, and I think that's got to be a good thing for people to understand what's going on in the rest of society. So yeah, I would see that as a good thing. Having said that, an ideal world would be one in which no one needs to. Everyone has enough money to buy as much food as they want for themselves.
Well, it's big society working, isn't it? Isn't David Cameron's idea beginning to have some sort of substance?
I'm not, this is out of sheer desperation and people taking suddenly noticing it, and we've suddenly noticed it at the London Assembly. This cost of living crisis is very, very real. Thank goodness the Adam Smith Institute have at least acknowledged it. But the energy companies, for example, they've been operating as a cartel for so many years, they just can't see the grass from the wood, when they well, systematically have been increasing energy prices up to 10% annually for the last few years. We've actually got them in tomorrow, and it'll be interesting to see what they think they're going to be doing in the future. But there is a place to deal with this in government, and I think you have to break up some of the cartels that operate, which give them supernormal profits at the expense of people's day-to-day living standards. And that's the kind of thing I would like to see nationally, and I'm grateful that Ed Miliband has led the discussion on that with energy freeze proposals after 2015. But I want things done sooner than that, and I do think the government has actually really missed this while suggesting that the economy is getting better, that we're all in this together. They've actually lost sight of the fact that many people are becoming increasingly dependent on food banks to not only to feed their families, whilst also having to choose between food and heat very often, depending on how cold it is.
Well, I think on that rather depressing but realistic note, we have to end the programme. Thank you very much, Wassim Nur. Thank you, Murad Qureshi, Hannah Billing and Ben Southwood for taking part. And of course, thank you very much for watching.